Hi, good morning, and welcome to the ZP Vlog and Podcast. We like to do this every Sunday at approximately 8 a.m. London time, and it's really just a wrap up on the news from ZP for this week. So let me dive straight into it and just say that we did put some notes out this week, really about thinking the whole pathway from idea to a commercial product. So with ZP, we have a very kind of specific workflow, or one of the workflows within us is, somebody gets a screen printed electrode, they may use it bare or they may functionalize it and it becomes a biosensor. They need to be able to do some R&D testing, so it's important that you do that in parallel. What I mean by that is at least sort of 6 sensors at a time, so that you can sort of do 6, 12, 18, 24. I mean, we're talking in the end, thousands of tests have to happen. And if you're doing it one at a time, that's 1,000 individual experiments. Whereas if you do it, for example, in blocks of 6, we're talking, much more sort of like, 150 experiments, but at 6 at a time, for example. So we do talk about that workflow. Then we have to talk about the data crunching. So if you're going to produce all this data, how are you going to analyze it in a meaningful manner? Well, that's Julie, because Julie can bring in a lot of data very rapidly. And then you've got to think about how am I going to actually turn this into a product? And that's really Sense It All. So Sense It All is a kind of OEM solution that says, I did something in the lab. It was, let's say, interesting, and I was able to turn it into a product using this Sense It All platform. So we did put a note out there this week about commercialization and really just starting at the screen printed electrode and finishing in an actual tangible product, which we call Sense It All. So that was a note that we put out there this week. Something that's significant and will be going out on Tuesday. If you've signed up to our newsletter, the newsletter will go out this week, and it's really just trying to condense lots of activities that are happening in the near future so that people can kind of rapidly find these things. We talk about, at ZP, we do a lot of electrochemical sensors, electrochemical assays, but I think that really distinguishes us is the commercialization of these technologies. So our focus is not on potentiostats or screen printed electrodes. It's on the focus of these technologies being able to commercialize us, or we're able to commercialize them. We'll also touch on things in the newsletter like the testing of ginger. So there's also some kind of just interesting, to understand that one can actually test ginger and measure materials like gingerol in products, in natural products such as that. Something that we do a lot of, and I think this is really testament. We understand that people are really busy, and if you want to get information across them in an efficient manner, webinars are not a bad way of doing it, because we can talk to people in real time, they can ask their questions in real time. In our webinars, we always kind of demonstrate the technology as well. So it's not just a matter of just doing and talking. No, we always show you doing the webinar. So we have a webinar on Julie. We have a webinar on Sense It All. We have a webinar on data science in biosensor development. We have a webinar on food sense. So we often, with our main sort of product lines, we actually do have a webinar every month on these technologies. Something else that we have going on is, I think it's a complementary really to the webinars, because the webinars are kind of, we put a lot of content in there in a 45-minute period. We actually do then in-person, let's say, workshops, and these workshops, again, they're the same idea that we want people to see. But the nice thing about the workshop is you can also do as well. So we do have a workshop running in Norway on the 3rd and 4th of October. And so essentially that is booked in. And we also have a workshop and I should have said in Norway, we have it in November, and in October it's actually in France. So the quick comment there is we do have 2 workshops going on, one in October in France and one in Norway in November. Some other news from ZP this week. I think obviously for ZP, we think this is significant, but we've actually on revision 1.7 of Julie. So there was essentially there was a version 0 of Julie, and now we're kind of, we've definitely transitioned the whole technology stack into a new version, and now we're on version 1.7. So we did put some, we did a little webinar about it, obviously describing Julie, but then we sort of jumped into the new features that are actually available in Julie 1.7. And there are things like inviting people to look at the data, or requesting access to data. So these are sort of not so much features around the data, but features around the sharing and accessing of data. So we did do a little webinar about the updates on that. Something else as well that ZP is, I think we're very proud of actually this work, and we're really proud of the distance that PK took this. But ZP, we've put out a video this week, or we've linked to a video this week, talking about microneedles in CGM. So microneedles are minimally invasive needles that go through the skin into what's called the interstitial fluid, and we're measuring people's glucose in their interstitial fluid. And ZP was the technology provider, or one of the technology providers behind PK. Something else, we do have some more S Cubed events coming up. So S Cubed, we had an inaugural event a couple of weeks ago. It was really successful. I mean, I really felt there was definitely an energy in the room with, people really enjoying the content, people enjoying the balance between fundamental academic research and the balance also then between industrial speakers. So we had billion-dollar companies. We had ST Micro speaking. That's a $55 billion business. We had Kongsberg speaking. That's probably a $5 billion business. We had a really good guy from the University of Oslo speaking. Some really good speakers from the USN, University of Southeast Norway. So there really was a nice balance between academia and industry. And industry describing real-world applications, and academia describing the fundamental technology that allows those things to happen. So really great balance, just exactly where ZP likes to be, right at the interface between fundamental research and commercialization. I think that's, we have definitely found our place there. And I suppose, just to sort of give people a sense of what was happening, we also have a photo gallery up on the website as well, where we sort of show, it really was a lot of energy. It wasn't your typical sort of academic conference where everyone speaks, questions are answered, and then they move on. No, we did things like panel discussions, and the panel discussions, you can really unlock some great value from the panel discussions when you've got people talking through ideas. And I think some people felt it was sort of like a TED talk experience as well, because these were extremely active and interactive talks. And so we were delighted really with the quality of the speakers. The speakers were, personally invited. We had Accenture there, for example, talking about precision agriculture. And I mentioned, we also had SINTEF there as well. So we also had some sort of non-government research organizations, but we had a great talk from Daryl Powell. Daryl's interesting because he's in Norway. He's originally English. He did a lot of work in Wales, or a lot of academic research. He's very interested in lean manufacturing, and he spoke that lean manufacturing, it's almost a philosophy for the mind rather than a sort of, just because you put yellow tape on the floor to show people where to walk. These are kind of helping to guide the brain. It's a philosophy as much as practical tools. So great talk from Daryl. He gave us our preliminary on the first day. We also had our CEO Evan Zimmer speaking as well. So in all, great talk. And people said to me, "Wow, the speakers were really charismatic, really informative, and they really enjoyed it." So we learned a lot of lessons off that, and we are holding an S Cubed event in the UK in June 2024, and we are holding an S Cubed event again in Norway in 2025. So we carry on, and we're delighted with the entire events. All right, so I think that's essentially our news from ZP for this week. So if I was to summarize it up, we are putting out a lot of information at the moment about, you start with a screen printed electrodes. You have to do parallel testing on those electrodes, otherwise you're never going to get enough data. You do need to really kind of, I want to say, corral that data in terms of, you've got to know where your data is. You've got to be able to analyze it quickly. You've got to have an idea how you're actually going to turn it into a product, and that's obviously the sense for us. That's the Sense It All platform. So I'm quite delighted with that. We will also talk about Sense It All in its own right. We do have webinars talking about these specific aspects. Here's Julie. Here's a webinar on it. Here's Sense It All. Here's a webinar on it. So and every week, I've even failed to mention it, we do a webinar called, it's the ZP Developer Zone, where we just talk about our technology in general. I think I've probably said enough for this week now. So Tuesday this week, there will be a webinar on Julie. Wednesday this week, there will be a webinar on FoodSense. Thursday this week, there will be a webinar on ZP's general technologies. And then just wrapping back to Tuesday, there are 2 live streaming demos of FoodSense, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. If you have any questions of ZP, I would say just don't hesitate to reach out to us. You will find us responsive, and I just want everyone to have a good week and speak to some of you soon. Okay, thanks very much.